Opening Pokemon cards is no longer enough. Grading Pokemon cards is no longer enough. I have fallen far too deep down the rabbit hole, and I will no longer be satisfied until I become the Pokemon card grader. I want to be the one dashing your dreams of a PSA 10 Charizard by overanalyzing and hypercriticizing flaws in your card that are literally invisible. But first, yeah, I gotta practice. So let's grab some cards and let's take a look. Also, one thing you'll notice in this video is that my cards are from CGC and they are of the old CGC variety. I filmed this video back in the summer before CGC implemented all these like new changes that they've got. They've got a different slab, they've got some different grading scales, but this was filmed before all that. Anyway, so yes, today we are doing a guess that grade kind of video where I'm gonna take a bunch of Pokemon cards that I really like from my collection, send them in for grading, but also try and see if I can accurately guess what grade these cards are gonna get. Obviously, this is an idea that I got from watching Leonhard, but I want to take it a little bit further than he does. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Pokemon cards here that are completely ungraded, plus one Pokemon card that has already been graded by a different grading company, and I want to see if I can accurately guess what grade all of these cards are gonna get after I send them in. Oh, and I also have a card that I accidentally cracked the slab of after knocking it off my desk, so I'm gonna send it in to be reholdered. Which, yes, if you can't tell from the fact that I just held up a CGC slab, we are going to be grading with CGC today. Ooh, I just got hit with the need to poop. Uh-oh. And the way we're gonna do this is extremely nerdy, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at each individual card. I'm going to examine them using this magnifying LED light to get a good up-close look at the cards front and back. Where is it? Guys, seriously, hold on. I can't find my bed. It's gotta be in here somewhere. I don't really take it places. Probably should have looked for this and made sure I knew where it was before I hit record, but whatever. Then I might take a look at each card with this little blacklight pen. I don't know if it'll do much, but it's the only reason I have it, so yeah, hopefully it'll do something. Then I'm gonna mark all of my findings down in this, my card grading book. I told you I was gonna get nerdy. I'm a dork, dude. So I got the idea for doing this from seeing some other grading videos where people sent cards in and then they were sent back not graded. You know, something was wrong with the cards, they couldn't grade it. And in those videos, they were often sent back a little sheet of paper like this. This is something from a different grading reveal video that I haven't edited and posted yet, so I'm gonna keep that secret. What's written right there, I'm gonna keep that secret. But each one of these has a little square here denoting the front and back of the card, and on these, they do little like lines and markings and circles and stuff to denote little blemishes on the card. And that's how they indicate to you, the person who sent in your card, what the issue is, why it got what it got, why it's not being graded, etc. So I thought I'd do something like that, but instead of marking things that would disqualify a card from grading, I would do it just to guess what a card would get graded in general. So this is an example from like 2021 when I bought a Charizard card off of eBay. It was like super played, kind of mod play condition. It was not near mint at all, so I took a close look at it and a bunch of other cards in this book, and I was like, okay, this is how I'm keeping track of all this. So up in the top, I've got the name of the card and the set it's from, and then over here, I've got where I got the card, the prediction of what grade I think it's gonna get, and then the actual grade it got, and then those diagrams. So in this instance, it was a Charizard base set card that I got from a fan-made repack of Pokemon cards, where they took a bunch of base set cards and then made their own custom pack out of them with a guaranteed holo, and I just happened to pull a Charizard. I looked at the front and back of the card as closely as I could, given the tools that I had at the time. I marked every single little ding of corner damage or edge damage that I found. I marked the centering, how it was off from like left to right, top to bottom, etc. And then here on the front, I marked that there was like scratches on the holo foil. And from there, I made my call. But as you can see, at the time, I thought it was gonna get like a 3 or 4 because it was a pretty well played card, and it actually got a 6.5, so it was a lot better than I thought it was gonna be. You know, these are from my very first grading submission like 2 years ago, so I was maybe a little bit stricter than I needed to be, and I definitely was off by quite a bit with a lot of these grades. Most of the grades I actually got were higher than what I gave myself. But this is where I'm gonna start taking notes down for each of the cards that I'm submitting in this batch. I mean, I'm not gonna show you the whole shebang of doing that. That would be kind of boring, but I am gonna do this off camera and then come back with my findings.
No, I'm with the science team.
Yeah! So now, just getting straight into the cards, we have the Umbreon VMAX Secret Alternate Art from Evolving Skies. Probably the biggest, most sought after modern Pokemon card of all time. People go crazy for this card. I've shown this before. I actually managed to pull this from a $25 tin at Target last year, so that was really crazy. And I've been meaning to get it graded ever since, but it's just been sitting and waiting. Then, next up, we have another base set Charizard, of course. I'm only sending some of my highest priority cards this submission, so yeah, if I got another base base set Charizard, I should probably grade it. So you remember when I launched this channel and I did this big base set booster box opening with MatPat, and in that video I said I bought a second box that I was never gonna open? I opened it, and I pulled this. I actually managed to get all the exact same holos from the second box as the first box, which is why I didn't really make any content out of it. All the pulls were exactly the same, except instead of getting a Magneton, I got a second Blastoise. So I got 2 Blastoise, a Venusaur, and a Charizard. For this submission, we're just gonna focus on the Charizard because it is the biggest hit out of the box, and I've got some other stuff that I wanted to get in here. Then following that up, here's something a little bit different. This is a vintage Japanese Pokemon card, and if you watch my channel, you might have seen this card before. The Japanese Blaine's Charizard that I pulled from a single pack at Hawaii PopCon. This was such a great moment. I'm so happy I managed to get this card. One of my favorite ones is coming up next. This is a Shining Celebi from Neo Destiny. Oh, what, you can't see it? Let me just do this. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's actually kind of hard to see still. So this is an old school Gen 2 shiny Pokemon card. The Neo sets were the very first in Pokemon history to do shiny Pokemon, and this is what they looked like. You might have seen some modern cards do something similar. The card art isn't holographic, the Pokemon is, and it has this very weird dark holo until you get it in just the right light when it literally shines. And because of that, you might not actually be able to tell. This Celebi is pink. It's really cool. It looks cooler in person. It's kind of hard to get on camera with these lights. But these are some of the rarest and most sought after Gen 2 era Pokemon cards, and this is the only one I have. There's Charizards, Tyrannitars, Mewtwo's, Noctowls, Kabutops, all that kind of stuff, but I am a Celebi fan. This is the only one I have. And I actually bought it from a really cool store in town here called Hidden Block Games. One of the first times I went there, I saw this in their like high-end card case, asked to take a look at it, and was really impressed with the condition. They had a few shining Pokemon cards from the Neo sets, but all of them were pretty banged up, except this one. Next up, you might have seen this one before if you've been watching my channel. This is the Tyranitar Holo from Pokemon Expedition base set. So this card I actually got from taking part in a live box break that Island Grown Pokemon was doing of the set Expedition. It's one of the final Gen 2 Pokemon sets. It's the first set that did these like e-reader borders, and it was one of the sets that I opened the most of when I was a kid. So I have a ton more nostalgia for this kind of Pokemon card than like the 1999 stuff. This is more like 2002. So obviously when my buddy Island was doing a box break of this, I had to buy in. And this is the card that first edition, quote unquote, base set 2 holo. This might seem like a bit of a smaller, less impressive card to chuck in here with like Charizards and Shinies and Umbreon VMAX alternate art, but this card is high priority to me because this is the first Pokemon card that got me back into this whole thing. This is the exact one. So you know, those are the raw cards that are going in to be graded for the first time ever. But I also wanted to send in this one PSA graded card for cross grading, the first edition Neo Genesis Lugia. Some of you might have seen this in a couple of videos in the past. I found this card raw, ungraded, at a flea market here in town for what was actually a pretty solid price for a card this sought after. The first ever Lugia holographic in first edition, I got it for what was kind of a steal. And part of that was because I looked at the condition and I saw that this card was really clean. Like if you look at the back, there is not a whole lot of damage. And that's not always common for a flea market find, especially for a card this rare. So I sent it into PSA and they gave it a near mint 8. Now, that is a fantastic grade. It kind of doubles the value of the card if that matters to you. But I quickly kind of regretted getting it graded with PSA. I'm not a huge fan of their slabs. They feel kind of flimsy. And I've had a number of PSA slabs where the card inside can kind of like jostle around a little bit if you're not careful. And then on top of that, because I've mainly been collecting CGC cards up to this point, it doesn't really match the rest of my collection. So for all those reasons, I wanted to cross grade it with CGC to get it into a matching slab with everything else, get those subgrades, and then maybe see if it can get bumped up a grade. Because as good of a grade as 8 is, I'm still not 100% sure why it got that low. And then lastly, like I said, there's this guy. This is just a Suicune V full art that I really like that got a 9.5. I revealed this grade in a different video, and then I accidentally knocked it off my desk and cracked the side of the slab, so I'm just sending it in to be reholdered. That's it. Alright, so I have now looked at every single card up close with the LED lamp, with the magnifying glass, with the black light, and everything. I have put all of my findings down into this book, and we're gonna go through it. So, starting with the Umbreon VMAX, we open up this book here. I'm gonna cover up the grade prediction until we go through this. So, when looking at the card up close, I noticed that the centering was off a little bit on the top to bottom. The top might be just the touch thicker than the bottom. Not intensely so, but a little bit. The centering on the front looks okay, but the back might have a slight touch of it being off from right to left. Maybe. That's why I put a little question mark there. And then this is something weird that I've noticed with a lot of cards from this particular era. That like late 2021 era with Evolving Skies, especially in Fusion Strike, I've noticed that sometimes the centering can be like off kilter. Like if you look at the back of the card here, you might notice that the border here might just be the slightest touch smaller than it is over here, which means that the card is more just like crooked. It's weird. You know, that might just be my eyes playing tricks on me. But I also did notice like the slightest bit of corner damage right here, but other than that, this card is really clean and in really good condition. I don't think it's close enough that it could get a 10 because 10s are extremely difficult, but for the Umbreon VMAX alternate art from Evolving Skies, I'm predicting pretty safely a 9.5. Like I said, with something like this, I don't think a 10 is impossible, but it will be really unlikely. It definitely isn't a perfect 10. So yeah, my prediction on this is a solid, safe 9.5. Honestly, if it got a 9, I would be surprised. Then moving right along to the base set Charizard. So it's a base set Holo Unlimited Charizard from 1999. It is pack fresh. I am covering up the prediction of what grade I think it's gonna get until after we take a look at the analysis, and this one actually gets a little interesting. So starting off on the back, I noticed a little bit of corner damage here, some white spots on the edges here and here and here. Centering is a bit noticeably off on the top to bottom, maybe slightly off on the left to right, but not as much. And then right here on the back of the card, I noticed what might be like the smallest, ittiest bittiest dent. This is a pack fresh card. It is straight from a box, but there was just the tiniest little like mark here that kind of looked like a dent. I don't know if they'll notice that, but if I noticed it, they probably will too. So the surface is not getting like a perfect 10, especially when you look at the front and you see that there is a print line across the holo foil right here. That's what this means. There's also a couple of spots of silvering here on the corners and edges. The corner right here in particular looks like it slopes a little bit weird, so the cut's not perfect. But then right here, right next to his wing on the little gold border of the art, I noticed something weird. Right next to his wing on this gold border here, right around here, there's this little green line. It doesn't look like a scratch, it doesn't look like damage, it just looks like maybe a weird little printing error. Like a little bit of ink just got into the wrong spot. And I went back and found a picture of this card from the day I pulled it, like right after I got it from the pack, from the box that I opened, and it's been there the entire time. So this is not damage necessarily. This looks like some kind of printing error, so I'm curious to see how they grade that. But with all of that in mind, for this particular Charizard, I'm guessing maybe a 9. I think a 9 is a pretty safe bet, though I would not be surprised if it got that extra bit down for an 8.5. Because there's also a couple of spots on the holo foil besides that print line that kind of look like just weird little dots. I don't know what they're from, I don't know if they're damage, I don't know if they're dents, but they're just weird little dots. Very hard to notice, but I did see them under the microscope. And of course, there's the Blaine's Charizard Japanese Holo, another pack fresh vintage card. And Japanese card print quality and quality control has always been a step above the rest. So this card is actually exceptionally clean. I found this one little ding on a corner on the back. That's not a whole lot. Found a couple little speckledy spots on the back as well. Not really sure what that's about or if it's anything major. But of course, the biggest problem with this card is that centering. On the front and back, this thing is wickedly off-center. I have a few graded cards that are similarly off-center, and they tend to get maybe like an 8 to an 8.5 on that centering. I don't know about this one. This is really off to my eyes, but everything else is exceptionally clean. The centering really is the only major problem here. No, not the grade you would have wanted for a pack fresh Charizard pull, but you can't control that centering, and this is still a fantastic card. It's gonna look so good in a slab. All right, things are about to get interesting because now we're getting to the Shining Celebi Secret Rare from Neo Destiny. This is the only card in this grading submission that was not pulled straight from a pack, and even though it's in pretty dang good condition, there's a number of things wrong with it. So, obviously the centering isn't perfect, it almost never is. This one's a little bit off on the right to left, but not extremely so. We got some edge wear in a number of different points on the back and the front. You got a couple of little white spots up here. Obviously the corner's got some minor dings. There's a little bit of surface damage right on Celebi's forehead here that's actually kind of interesting to see, because it actually kind of pokes through on the back as well. There's a little white spot right here in this corner, but the weirdest thing is that when I got this card under a black light, I noticed the entire yellow edge was like weirdly aged and faded. There was just this weird, subtle, crackly fade across the entire yellow border that I guess just comes with maybe like sun damage or age or something, but it was not looking great. I don't know if I'll be able to get that on camera, but if I will, I'll put some footage in right here. But because of all that, even though I love this card and I would love for it to get a better grade, I'm feeling a 7.5 on this one. Not a terrible grade, but not the kind of grade you really want to get. But, you know, I can be optimistic and say maybe we'll get an 8, but I don't know. Yeah, right here you might be able to see some of that surface damage. There's a little bit of it on the back. That white spot in the corner right there. And then let's see. If I turn these lights off, grab my black light. Actually, maybe if I close the window too. We're really messing with the lighting situation in here today. Turn the overhead light off too. Why not? We're getting scientific. This is what this room and set looks like when the lights are off. You can see that white spot in the corner a lot better. You can see those white spots in the top a lot better. I still don't think you can see the surface damage on Celebi's forehead that well, but when you go down the side here, you can really start to see that weird aging that I was talking about. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know exactly what that comes from, but it's definitely not looking perfect. And in the back here, this is what I do. This is the kind of stuff that I do for fun. Can you believe that? This is what I do for fun. All right, get the lights back on. Boom. So yeah, I'm feeling a bit of a 7.5 on this one, but you know, if I can get an 8, I would be extremely happy. Getting back to some of the stronger cards here, we've got the Tyranitar from Expedition, one of my favorites. And with this card, we're back to things being pretty clean across the board. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of minor edge wear on both sides. Some a little bit more obvious on the back, some a little bit more obvious on the front. And unfortunately, there is one of those little tiny whitening spots on basically every single corner of this card. But other than that, things look pretty good. There's no scratches, there's no print lines, there's no surface damage. But right here, I don't know if you can see it, I marked it down here. There's this tiny weird little white spot. Yeah, right there. There's this tiny little white speck that's not supposed to be on this card. Doesn't look like a scratch, doesn't look like any kind of like dent or anything. It honestly looks like another ink error. I have no idea if they'll grade that as surface damage or anything, but other than that, if we bust the black light back out, you might be able to see some of those like weird little white edge spots, especially this one right here. That one's pretty noticeable. But other than that, this card is actually exceptionally clean, especially the centering. The centering, despite this being like a weird e-reader card with those thick borders, this might have the most dead-on centering of any card we've seen today. So, you know, as optimistic as I might want to be that this could be the one that scores a 10, I'm gonna err on the safe side and say a 9, maybe a 9.5. Basically, everything about this card is perfect except for those corners, and then any other issues are super minor, super negligible, but I think those corner dots are gonna be enough to score this thing down to a 9. But because the centering is so good, I could see it getting that extra 9.5. I don't see it getting a 10, though if it did, that would be insane, but we're trying to be realistic here. Then we got kind of the underdog of the whole submission, the Machamp from Base Set 2. This like first edition Base Set 2 starter deck CD-ROM set Machamp Holo promo, which is the card from my childhood collection that got me back into all of this. It's the first Pokemon card that I found and like got interested in and like, this is what started all of this exact card, so I'm really excited to get this graded. This wasn't in a sleeve, this wasn't in a top loader, this wasn't in a binder, this was essentially loose in a box with a very, very thin level of protection for like 20 years. That being said though, it's actually in pretty decent condition, though we've got a couple of things to point out. Obviously the back's got a couple of white spots on the edges and the corners. This is a little bit different. I noticed a bit of a print line on the back. That's not usual. You know, factory print lines are usually more of a thing for hollow foil patterns, but there was definitely this like noticeable horizontal line going across the back when I got it under the real light. Centering's a little bit off on the right to left and the bottom to top. Not extreme, but noticeable. Just a little bit of edge wear across the back. But then one of the more noticeable problems is on the hollow foil pattern. We've got two really prominent print lines near the top. That's pretty unfortunate. And then this part's weird. I don't know exactly what this is, but once I got this card under the black light, I noticed this like ring around the entire outer edge. It doesn't look like edge wear. It doesn't look like a scratch. It doesn't look like anything that you normally see. It's a consistent white line. Maybe it just has something to do with the way it was cut, but I don't know. I don't know how that will be graded, but I marked it on the note as just like this big ring around the whole thing. I don't know exactly when this video is going up, but at the time of filming this, I have done a massive CGC return of all the childhood Pokemon cards that I showed off in one of the very first videos on this channel, and I got some pretty good grades, but not too many of the best grades went all that far above like an 8 or an 8.5. And considering that, along with everything everything I've seen here, I'm going to safely say this thing is maybe gonna get an 8.5, but it's not impossible that it squeaks out a 9. I would be a little surprised, but I'm gonna safely say an 8.5. And then last but not least, we have the Lugia from Neo Genesis First Edition Holographic, probably the biggest card I'm sending in. As you can see, this thing got a PSA 8 when I originally sent it in, but I'm sending it in to be cross-graded at CGC so that at the very least, it can get the exact same grade, but be crossed over into a CGC slab. That being said, it's not impossible that it could come back at a higher grade. So I took a closer look at it again, and I noticed actually a number of things that I didn't notice the first time around, because I did this whole process when I sent this thing into PSA, and I noticed, of course, on the front, there's a little bit of print lines and a little bit of surface scratches on the holo foil. A little unfortunate, but that's kind of what you get when you buy cards at a flea market, the entire outside of the card. But I don't think it's like damage. I think it's just how the card was cut, because otherwise, that's a pretty strong grade for something that would have that much edge wear. So I think it's just something weird. But the first time around when I examined this card, I only noticed this one little spot of whitening on the edge on the back. But this time around, I noticed a lot more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole spots of like some kind of edge or corner wear. That being said, I still think this thing is clean enough that it could maybe squeak out like an 8.5. But to be safe, I'm just gonna say this is probably just gonna get another 8. I messed up writing purchase there. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really feel confident enough in the condition of this card to say it's absolutely gonna get an 8.5 or even a 9. It's a very clean copy of this Lugia though, so I don't think it's impossible. But you know, if we're being realistic here, I think just guessing a CGC 8 is probably the best guess. Because you can tell them if they're gonna give it anything lower than this grade, then they'll just send you this slab back. So at the very least, very least, I'm going to get this slab back exactly as it is, and I might have wasted my money. The more realistic thing to expect is that this thing gets a CGC 8 and comes over in a new slab with subgrades, and now it matches the rest of my collection. But the best case scenario would be that CGC takes a look at it, they crack it out of the slab, they examine it and say, this actually looks like an 8.5 to us, and then they get it into the new slab, and now I have a higher graded card. That would be pretty cool, but I don't know about that. And then of course, like I said, there's this guy who's just going in to get this crack fixed. But yes, that is the submission. I have now taken a look at every single card. I have guessed their grades. I have given them my own thorough examination. And now I am going to pack these up, send them to CGC, and I will cut to probably 3 months from now when I get them back and we can see if I was right. And we're back. All right, so it's maybe been, a few weeks, maybe a month since I sent those cards off for grading. They are now back, except the Suicune that I sent in to be reholstered. That one hasn't come back yet, but that one's not really supposed to get any kind of change in the grade. These are the ones that we're meant to look at here. So I'm gonna set these off to the side and we are gonna look at them one by one compared to the book and see just how close I was in guessing these grades. So if we open the book up, we take out the little sleeve bookmark. CGC, Summer 2023. Great memories. Starting, of course, with the Umbreon VMAX Alternate Art Secret Rare from Evolving Skies, I had a pretty safe bet looking at the condition that this would get a solid 9.5. And so, here's the card, and let's just take a look and see what this thing got. Oh, there we go. Yeah, right on the money, starting out strong with a 9.5. Ooh, look at those subgrades too. The centering got a 9.5, the edges and corners got 10s, and then the surface got a 9, which I'm not 100% sure where that's coming from. But yes, I was right. First one in and I was already right. That's awesome. Oh, I love that. And that means we can add it to the book too. So with the prediction being a 9.5, we can finally say that this got a true 9.5. Right on the money so far. Oh, and then we can also add in the subgrades. Centering was a 9.5, surface was a 9, and then corners and edges were both perfect 10s. Nice. Let me put this up close to the camera so you can really see it. If you guys watching at home can see anything on this card that would make that 9 surface subgrade make sense, let me know, because I really looked this thing over, and while it did get the grade I expected, I don't know if I see anything wrong with the surface. Granted, these cards have all this texture on the front that does kind of make it hard to see anything on the surface. I do trust the grade. It's what I expected it to get, but I'm just curious what surface imperfection I'm not seeing here. But anyway, now we move on to the Charizard base set holo. Like I said, this is the base set holographic Charizard that I pulled from my second box of base set that I opened off camera for fun. I do plan on grading all the cards that I pulled from that box. I just kind of wanted to have like one box to myself that didn't get immediately contentified. Looking at it up close, I thought obviously this is in really good condition, but there are 1 or 2 little imperfections. I don't know if this could squeak a 9.5. I said a safe 9, but maybe an 8.5. 8.5. But I have the card in my hand right now, so we can all see whether or not I was right. Oh! Oh my god. What? Oh, this is huge. This is big. This is big. Okay. We got another Gem Mint 9.5 on a base set Charizard. Wow. Wow, okay. Which means we can actually take a look at this compared to my other base set Charizard from those openings, both of which got 9.5s. That's insane, but we can actually take a look and compare. So the base set Charizard that I got on camera got a 9.5 for every single subgrade, making this a perfect Gem Mint 9.5. This one was very close, but again, that surface got just the tiniest little markdown, which I was kind of expecting. Despite the box that this one came out of being in better shape, the cards inside weren't quite as clean. But you know, with cards this old, you never really know what to expect with how long they've been sitting in storage. But a Gem Mint 9.5 on a card like this is... oh, it's so cool. It's so huge. But that is a gigantic win. We can actually be wrong in the best way. Because the prediction was a 9 or maybe even an 8.5, but we got a 9.5 with 9 5s on everything except the surface. That is huge. Ow, my finger. Okay, so things are going pretty well so far. I've actually been pretty good at guessing the grade so far, and anytime I've gotten the grade wrong, it's been because I was more harsh than me. Centering was tremendously off. Like, it was really off center. I wasn't exactly sure how much that centering would affect the grade, so I put in what I think is a pretty safe 8.5. I don't really see it getting anything less than that. An 8 would maybe surprise me. So let's take it out and see. Ooh, oh, whoa, okay, yeah, this is surprising. This card got a Mint 9 with 10 subgrades on everything except this, but that centering was so off that, of course, we couldn't get a perfect 10, or even a 9.5, but a 9 is actually a really solid grade here. I am very happy with that. All for the exact same reasons that I had, like, predicted. But I could tell that basically everything else was perfect, which it's actually, that's kind of the standard with a lot of these Japanese Pokemon cards from back in the day. The quality control for the Japanese Pokemon cards has always been a step above the English Pokemon cards, so usually you're pretty safe to get high grades on these, but the centering, yeah, that threw things off. Wow, a 9 on the Blaine's Charizard, that's incredible. That is incredible and completely reasonable. So let's toss it into the book. Prediction grade was an 8.5, actual grade was a 9. Then every single subcategory got 10s, except for the centering, which got an 8. That is all completely fair. Okay, so I've only technically got 1 grade right. Out of the 3 we've looked at so far, I've only managed to get 1 right on the money. But my assessment of each card has generally been on point. I've just been off by 1 or 2 marks when it comes to the actual final grade. So I think I've got a decent sense of how they assess the cards, but I maybe don't know their actual, like number scale here. Which, I mean, is fair. I don't work for him. But now we're moving on to the really interesting one, the Shining Celebi. Now, I took a look at this thing in severe detail. I looked at it under an LED magnifying lamp. I looked at it through blacklight. I looked real closely at that thing. And even though I thought it was in really good condition, I thought when you really got into the minute details, it wasn't that great. It looks really nice to the naked eye, but when you really get up close, you start to see the pitfalls. So I put in a guess of 7.5. Maybe a little bit harsh, but I don't know. This did not look perfect to me when I got it, like, up real close. So this is the one that I'm probably the most interested to see what we get. What? Whoa. What? No. No. That does not... What? No, that doesn't make sense. No, that doesn't make sense at all. It got a 9. I guessed a 7.5? Look at this. The surface got a 9.5. What? The corners and edges got 9s, which, I mean, yeah, they're not perfect. But the surface I thought was really gonna get hit hard on this one. I thought I noticed a lot of, like, imperfections, even just on Celebi's forehead here. I mean, a 9 is a fantastic grade. I will take it, but I really thought this was gonna be a lot worse off. You know, I'm honestly not sure if I agree with this grade. It looks really clean upon first inspection, but when you really get in close, I feel like this would be more deserving of like an 8 at most, maybe. Like an 8, 8.5 at most. 9 seems a little bit high, but I guess I'll take it. Wow, that's actually really surprising. Maybe I am too harsh. Maybe I'm way too harsh on my cards. All right, well, that was a That was a massive shock. I guessed a 7.5 and it got a 9. The centering and surface got 9.5s, which the centering I kind of expected, but I really thought I saw some like scratches or imperfections on the hollow and on the back when it came to the surface. I really thought I saw some like notable problems. In the corners and edges, I saw a bunch of dings and stuff there too, but I guess not enough to keep them from getting 9s themselves. That's really interesting. I mean, either I'm too harsh on my cards or CGC is a lot less strict than I expect. Okay, so I got that one really wrong. I got that one like painfully wrong. But honestly, I'm not sure if that one's my fault. That grade feels a little bit wrong to me in general. Like, not only did I guess it wrong, I feel like that is just not the right grade that this card deserves. I will take it, but I still have questions. I don't feel confident that that card would get the same grade if I sent it to, say, PSA or Beckett. I really am not sure. But, I guess there's nothing else to do but to move on, and now we're talking about the Tyranitar Hollow from Expedition. This is probably one of the cleanest cards in the submission, especially among the vintage stuff. So I guess a pretty safe 9, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if this could squeak out a 9.5. Let's see. So, my Tyranitar holographic from the Expedition box break got... Hey, perfect. Ooh, hit the nail on the head on this one. It got a mint 9. Nice. Yeah, so where the Celebi really confused me, this one is actually exactly what I expected. The edges and the centering got 9.5s, which is great. They looked basically perfect to me. The surface got a 9, and the corners got a 9. That makes perfect sense to me. Because when you look at the back, every single corner did have like at least some kind of slight imperfection. And that little white dot right there, I don't think that's like a surface issue, but it is something. That is a great grade. That is actually a really good, solid grade. We haven't had anything below a 9. Huh, I really thought we were gonna have some harsh grades in this one. All right, so the Tyranitar Hollow from Expedition, I guessed a 9, and it got a 9. Nice. Surface got a 9, corners got a 9, and then the edges and corners, or edges and centering, mind me, got a 9.5 each. Perfect. Right on the money. Okay, so I'm back on it. Again, I have not been perfect at guessing these grades. I've had one that was really off, but I feel like I've got the assessment down. It's just the final number tally that I'm a little bit shaky on. But now we're moving into the last of the main grading submission, the Machamp Base Set 2 Holographic. This is a Base Set 2 Machamp from a CD starter set from back in like the year 2000 or whatever. So I was thinking it could maybe score a 9, but I was a little bit more conservative here and I guessed an 8.5. But we'll just have to see for ourselves. What did it get? Hey, awesome, a 9. So I was actually kinda right on this one. I made my main guess as an 8.5, but it actually squeaked out the 9, which I said it might. I'm gonna count this as maybe being like half a point. Ooh, but look at that, the corners and edges got 10s. That's awesome. That's actually really good for a card this old that wasn't like properly sleeved up for a long time. It was just kind of sitting in its original plastic. Obviously, the surface getting a 9 makes sense for those print lines, and the centering isn't perfect, so that 9 makes sense, but 10s on the corners and edges is huge for a card like this. And with this being the card that kind of reignited my interest in Pokemon card collecting, I am so happy to not only have it back, have it graded, but for it to have gotten exactly the grade I thought it deserved. Kinda, give or take. Oh, that one makes me so happy. This is like the least sought after, least rare card in the submission, but it's probably the one that makes me the most happy and nostalgic. Oh, I love this so much. And look at that swirl. That swirl is right at his fist. Oh, that's really nice. All right, celebratory. Going into the book, we got an actual grade of 9, which I actually kinda guessed, though I didn't commit to it. Corners and edges got 10s, and then the other things got 9s, but we don't have to talk about that part as much. And then, last but not least, we have the Lugia from Neo Genesis. The first edition Neo Genesis Lugia holographic that I bought from a flea market last year, got graded with PSA, had it come back an 8, and I'm now sending it in to be regraded by CGC so it'll match the rest of my collection. I kinda thought, it'll probably just stay the exact same grade and they'll put it in the new CGC slab. If it got anything less than that, they would have just sent me back the PSA slab that I already had, which is nice. So the worst case scenario here was maintaining a PSA 8. But I was really hoping I could maybe squeak out an extra 0.5, so let's see. Hey! Oh, yes! Yes! Perfect. This is exactly what I was hoping for. I just knew. I just knew in the back of my head that this thing deserved at least a little more than an 8. Just a little bit more. Oh, that's satisfying. So we got a first edition Neo Genesis Lugia Holo in an 8.5 from CGC. That's so great. And we get the subgrades so we can actually get like a breakdown of why they gave it this grade. PSA doesn't have subgrades and CGC won't have subgrades anymore by the time you're watching this, which sucks, but whatever. So the edges got 9.5s, as did the corners. Fantastic. The centering got a 9, but then the surface did get an 8, which I was kind of expecting. The surface is the part of this card that is the most messed up, but it is still an exceptionally clean copy of this card, and this is a hugely sought after card. And getting that extra 0.5 was exactly what I was hoping for in best case scenario. I didn't think it was gonna get up to a 9. I didn't think that was gonna be possible, but that extra 0.5 is exactly what I was hoping for. That is a huge win. Oh, that's so good. It makes me feel really happy to be able to put CGC 8.5 in this book. Nice. Then of course we got a 9 on the centering, an 8 on the surface, and then 9.5s for both the corners and the edges. And that is it, baby. So to recap, we got a 9.5 Umbreon VMAX alternate art, a 9.5 base set Charizard, probably the biggest card of the video in general, a 9 on the Japanese Blaine's Charizard, that was a fantastic win, a 9 on the Shining Celebi, which I still kind of have questions about, a 9 on the Expedition Tyranitar Holo, which is exactly what I thought it deserved, a 9 on my childhood base set 2 Machamp, which I am so happy about, and an 8.5 Lugia. We got an upgrade. And when it comes to actually guessing the grade, I was right on the Umbreon and the Machamp, like right dead on. I was maybe like half right on the Machamp. I was about 0.5 off on both Charizards and the Lugia, but then the Shining Celebi was the one that I was like completely off base with. I thought this was gonna get a 7.5, but it somehow scraped up all the way to a 9. There was only one that I got really wrong, and then everything else I was pretty dang close, if not dead on. So yeah, I am really happy to have these cards back. These are some of the best cards in my collection, bar none. And yeah, leave.